Hello again. So this lesson will be the continuation still of what we call the consumer preferences, but we are now dealing with the second part of what we had as the three theories that could explain the different consumer preferences. We are now dealing with what what we call the budget line concept already. So this budget line uh, is simply a figurative expressions of how do we actually allocate the budget that we have with the different goods. Hmm? So in here, all combinations of goods which the total amount of money spent is equal to income, which then this is illustrated through what we call your budget line. Now take note that since our graphical illustration is just an explanation of a two kind of good, which is the X and Y, which will represent any kind of good that you're going to buy. So therefore, we only have to consider two kinds of goods. So if we are going to discuss the concept of the budget line, we have to ignore now the possibility of what we call savings. We know in reality speaking, people are going to save their money, but in order for us to further understand what we call the consumer preferences or how do people actually behave through the different goods that they prefer, is we have to ignore this saving factor. Okay, so hypothetically, as a consumer, we have to spend all our income in buying a good Y or in buying a good X. Now we have to continue this kind of discussion through using our past example, which is the food and the clothing itself. Okay, so therefore, the general formula of how do we actually allocate our income is this one. Okay, it is just simply multiplying the price of the good X to the quantity that we're going to buy plus the quantity of the other product multiplied by its price itself. Okay, so here, if since we are going to use the F and the C, which will represent the food and the clothing, so we have to change our formula in using this one, which is the price of the food times the quantity of the food plus the price of the clothing times the quantity of the clothing. So remember, there is a constraint in our budget. So that means even though we had to buy a lot of clothings, we have to remember that we have to combine both of them. Unless you are only planning to buy a clothing only, so therefore you have to exemplify this one. Okay? But in buying only a clothing, then we only have to make a budget through the amount that we have because of this one. There is always a constraint. A constraint in the sense that there is always a limitation in the way we spend our money since we do not have a lot, but we only have this limit. And that will explain to us by the budget line, which is simply as this one. Okay, so let's see how the budget line looks like. A budget line is just how are we going to graph what is within this table. So remember last time that we have the market basket, which will composes of this different kinds of combinations from A to G, which shows to us how many amounts of food, how many amount of clothing are we going to buy with the exact amount of our money. Okay, so in here, in order for us to put this one in our graphical illustration, is just you have to represent here as your food and this one as your clothing. So by combining the market basket A, we are going to buy zero food and 0 clothing. So since food is on the y-axis, that means here we are here. And how many clothings is we have, for example, at 40. Here would be the 40. Okay, but if you're going to use all our 80 pesos in just buying the food itself, then we are at market basket G, which is from 0 clothing and 80 clothes. 80 food. So that will be here. Okay, so another one, by doing this one, market basket B, that is 20 food and 30 clothing. So just looking for the combination, let's say assume that this will be the 20, or this will be the 20 food, and this will be the 30 clothing. So we have here, and etc. And just combine, I just connect the dot, and we have already your budget line. Now this point is what we call the point consumption, because we're going to use only our income at that point. Okay, so by the example that we have on the table, we now know that the price of the food is considered $1 per unit, and then the price of the clothing will consider be $2 per unit. So how are you going to distribute your 80 pesos in buying that? And this will be all the combinations of it. Okay, plotting this table will give you a better picture, which is this one. This picture here will give you the plotting of the table. Okay, this would be the result of it. Okay, so take note that once you plot those one, you will see already the different combinations in here. Now, take note that since we have a certain kind of a formula that we have on the income, now we are going to follow the basic formula of what we call the linear function, correct? Now, by using the linear function itself, okay, remember that I always told you that the first thing that you're going to solve is always the slope of the line. Now, what do you call the slope of the budget constraint? Now, the slope of the budget constraint is simply what we call the price of X divided by the price of Y. Since we have a downward sloping curve that entails the negative relationship of these two kinds of goods, and therefore it will always be a negative. Okay, so the slope of the budget constraint is considered to be a negative, which is this one. Okay, there. Since we identify already the slope of the budget constraint, take note from the indifference curve that we have the slope of the indifference curve, which is also considered to be the MRS. Okay, which is the marginal rate of substitution. Take note that we had discussed that the marginal rate of substitution explains to us or tells us that if we are going to consume more of clothing, we have to sacrifice some of food. And if we are going to consume more of food, we have to sacrifice some of clothing. And that will give us the marginal rate of substitution. Okay? And same is true when it comes to the slope of the budget line, which is considered to be the negative px, or the negative price of the good x divided by the negative I divided by the price of y. Okay, so it is a negative, which also explains to us a diminishing relationship, which is also the same as with this one. Okay, why is it negative? Because if we're going to spend more of food, then we have to spend less on clothing, like that. So that's why it is considered to be negative. Okay, so that's how you deal with what we call the different slope of both of the theories that explains the preferences, the indifference curve and the budget constraint. Okay, so in here looking at this one, how do we determine the budget constraint slope? Is just this one, or simply you're going to use this. The slope is the net change and the clothing divided by the change in the food. This one is the change. From point B to point D, what is the change? That is the 30 minus 20, which is the 10. And the change in F, which will be from 20 to 40, which is plus 20. So this would be the change. So by having that, is we have what we call the 1/2. Okay, and that will give you what we call this one, change negative, the change in the price of F to the change in the price of C. Okay, so that's how you're going to deal it. Okay, so take note that a budget line always describes the combination of the goods that can be purchased, as I explained a while ago. Okay, now by looking at this ones, since the price of the food is 1 unit and the price of the clothing is 2, so it is simply 1 divided by 10 divided by 2, or simplify as 1 2. Okay, or just doing this, the change in clothing divided by the change in the food itself. Okay, so that's how you deal with the slope of the line. Now, since we have already the budget line function, which is f plus 2c is equivalent to 80. Why is it considered to be this one? Remember that the price, remember diba, is the price of x times the quantity of x. So which is the price here, that's why it is f plus 2c. It is because we know that the price of food is 1, so that is supposedly 1f plus the price of the clothing, which is the 2. So therefore it is like that. Okay, so that's how you deal with this one. Okay, you're just substituting it to your formula already. So let's go on how do we deal with this one already, or further analysis on. Here now, to how to determine the amount of each good your budget can afford. So I already introduced to you last time the following formula. If you want to determine how much of the quantity Y are you going to buy given the income and the price, then this would be the formula itself. Okay, how many, if you are wanting to purchase an amount of X, which is considered to be your food. Okay, if you're wanting to determine the amount of clothing that you buy with the $80 that you have, okay, and you are wishing to buy only an amount of food which is 10 units, then how much Y are you going to buy? So just uh, substituting it to the formula. So therefore, we have here QY. Your income is $80 divided by the price of Y, which is considered to be 2 pesos, price of the clothing, okay, minus what is the price of your food. Yes, that is $1 divided by the price of Y, which is $2, or simply this one is the slope of the budget line, and times the quantity of food that you're going to buy, which is 10. Okay, so that is just 40 minus 5, and that the amount of Y, or the amount of clothing that you're going to buy, is 35. That's how you're going to solve the amount. Okay, yan. The intercept that was dealing in here, this one I minus by, that is the intercept of the function. Remember the y, mx plus b, which we substituted it somehow. So this one is the intercept, the y-intercept, which is simply this one, okay, on the function. While the slope of the line, which is the m here, is considered to be this one. And the x here is the other good, or one kind of good that you're going to buy. Okay, so that's how you deal with the function itself. So what does the slope, or what does this means, is that the magnitude of the slope tells us the rate at which the two goods can be substituted for each other without changing the total amount of money. Meaning, if the price of, or of the slope of the budget line is equivalent to 1/2, which is this one, that means for every 1 peso that you spend on clothing, you have to sacrifice 2 pesos on the clothing. Okay, so that is how you deal with what you call the magnitude of the slope itself. Okay, yeah. So what then would be the best way when it comes to allocating our income? That is to use it entirely in buying the two goods, assuming, or we have to make a fixed assumption that we do not save our money. Okay, so that's it when it comes to the budget line. Now let's proceed. Now, in the budget line, there are possible changes that could happen because we know that our income could change. Other than that, is the prices could also change. Okay, so first is we have an income change, and then we will deal with the price change. Now, remember, if there is an income change, the entire budget line will have to shift. Before is we have an $80, so therefore this is just the allocation of our income. But if your income will change, will increase to $160, that means you will have a higher quantity of clothing and higher quantity of food. So therefore it will shift upward. Okay, but if your income or the allowance that you're holding will decrease from $80 going to $40, then that means there will be a decrease in the amount of goods that you're going to buy. So there will be a decrease in your budget line. Okay, so simply as that, an increase in the income shift the budget line upward, and a downward shift of income is considered a decrease in the budget line. Okay, so that is the effect of changes in income. Okay, now let's proceed now to the changes in price. So simple as that. Now, if there is a change in the price, it's not that the budget line will have to shift upward or downward, but there is what we call a pivot in the budget line, a pivot change. So what do you mean by a pivot change? Example is this one. Okay, there is a possible change in the price of clothing, or there is a possible change in the price of food. Okay, so there are two ways that may happen in there. Okay, so for instance is, let's say there is a change in the price of, there is a change in the price of food. So if there is a change in the price of food, that means the budget line at this side will remain, and only this side will pivot. Okay, so from $80, if there is a change in the price of food, then it will either increase this side and or either decrease this side. So when does it increase or decrease, or why does this happen? Okay, so let's say for instance, let's deal with this one such as this. Now, if there is a decrease in the price of food, remember, as a consumer, a decrease in price will let us to buy more at a lower price. Okay, so in this case, remember this pivot change from here to that point, that means that the price of food decreases. Why do have people have to avail more of the food? But if there is an increase in the food, there will be a pivot to the left. Okay, that means the price increases. Okay, remaining and clothing, it is because the clothing price never change. Okay, same is true if it happens the other way around. If the clothing here, if the price of the clothing changes and the food price never changes, then therefore this one will pivot and this one will be remaining the same. So it will be like that. So that will be the changes when it comes to, or that will be, that will be the effect if there will be a change in the price itself. Okay, so that is the effect of the price change. So therefore, take note of this one. A change in the price of one good with income unchanged causes the budget line to rotate about one intercept. Meaning a pivot change from one point to this point, making the other point here constant or the other way around. Okay, so that is what we call the effect of the changes in the price. So I hope you understand, and I hope it is clearer already on how does the budget line actually deals with or actually works. Okay, now let's proceed. Now take note that the examples that we have been dealing are considered to be an example of how do actually people make use of their money. And that is what we call the purchasing power. The purchasing power is, that means the ability of the people to use their own money in buying their goods. Okay, the ability to generate utility. What did we mean when we say utility? We had a clear explanation last time that the utility here means satisfaction. Okay, so your purchasing power is your ability to generate a satisfaction in purchasing the goods that you wanted. Okay, so in here, a consumer's purchasing power can double either because her income doubles or because the prices of the good she buys fall by half. Okay, so there are two possible effects if there is a change in our purchasing power. So if the price decreases and your income here also increases, then as a result there is an increase in your purchasing power. Okay, in the other way, if the prices of the product increases and your income decreases, then your purchasing power decreases. Your ability to use or to avail goods with your given income decreases. That's what the purchasing power means. And since it entails satisfaction, if your purchasing power increases, higher satisfaction. If your purchasing power decreases, lower satisfaction. Okay, so that's what I mean. That's the result of the changes in the prices and income itself, and that's also how you determine your own purchasing power. Okay, so uh, I think that would be the end of our discussion in here, and I hope that you already understood the concept of what we call the budget. So, and another one is that since on the third part of the concept of the consumer preferences deals with the optimum combination, or what we call this one, the what will be the consumer's choice given our budget line and given our indifference curve, and that is what we call the maximization of the market basket. Remember that in order for us to satisfy our consumer choice, that means in order for us to maximize our market basket, is we have to reach these two goals. That is, the choice of good must be, or the amount of money pala that we're going to use must be located in the budget line. And secondly is that the consumer have to prefer a two combination of goods and services along their own satisfaction or the indifference curve. That is what we called, I mentioned that one, the tangency of your budget line and your indifference curve. Okay, so the tangency is considered to be your consumer's choice. Okay, so these two conditions actually reduce the problem of maximizing consumer satisfaction to one of picking an appropriate point of the budget line. Because of the consumer's choice, rather than choosing at this which point here, which in fact I have the indifference curve here, now we have to use these two conditions in order for us to maximize our own market basket. And how do we do that? Let's see it. here. Okay, so by doing that, is we know that with this different kind of indifference curve tree here is the best one. This is the best one because it will give us the highest satisfaction compared to indifference curve 1. But since our budget is only at this point, we cannot reach this kind of satisfaction even though we are wanting it. So we are stuck at this indifference curve 1 only. Okay, so that's the reality when it comes to dealing with our satisfaction and our budget. We are constrained. So therefore, since we are on this budget constraint in here, we are here at the budget constraint, and our budget would be either at here and here. Now take note, at this one we see to it that there are two indifference curve that actually touches the indifference ID budget line itself. We have here the B, market basket B. We have here also the market basket A. But since we do not choose any market basket here, even though it touches the budget line, so there will be no choices here. So there are two possible choices that we have to take with. We have at the market basket A and here. Now dealing with this one, question is, which combination are you going to take? Are you going to take B here, wherein you're going to take more of clothing and lesser of food? Okay, but your satisfaction will be lower compared to your combination A. Because at combination A, you will have a lower clothing and a higher food, but the satisfaction is bigger. Now, it's up to you as a consumer already which one are you going to choose. But dealing with the assumptions that we had discussed last time, choosing the indifference curve that has a higher satisfaction which touches the budget line will be the most preferred one, which will be the market basket A. But since this one, the market basket B here, touches our budget line, so therefore it is also a good choice. Especially if you are a person that is more on clothing rather than food, then you have to buy this kind of market basket, and you will only arrive at a 100 units of satisfaction. But if you're going to choose market basket B, then you are going to have a 200 worth of satisfaction. Okay, so that's how you're going to choose. You can only choose a combination of good that touches only the budget line because that is the limit of your income. Okay, so that's how you're going to maximize your own satisfaction. But this only happen if the slope of the indifference curve, which is the MRS, must be equivalent to the slope of the indifference curve. Sorry, not indifference curve, slope of your budget line. So if choosing B is the best one since it still touches the budget line, but if these two are not equal, then that's not the best combination. But if, for example, market basket A gives you a best equality between the MRS and the slope of the budget line, then that is the choice that you're going to take. But what if, for example, they're not yet equal? So that means there is or there must be an equality between the indifference curve. That's why they are tangent, because there is an equality. Okay? So that's how you deal with the choice of maximization. This is how you deal with it at this point. Okay? So that is for the consumer's choice. So how do we deal with the consumer's choice? Choose the market basket where MRS is equivalent to the negative PX all over Y, or the satisfaction is equivalent to your purchasing power. Okay, so that's how it is. Here is the consumer's choice. Since we have the MRS, how do you deal with the MRS? This one is the MRS, or simply after that is substituting it here. We have here MRS times the price of X divided by the price of Y. That is the optimum combination. So that means if we arrive at this optimum condition, then we maximize already our satisfaction. So the maximization of our satisfaction happens when the marginal rate of substitution is equal to the ratio of the price. Thus, a consumer can obtain a maximum satisfaction by adjusting his consumption of good and X so that the MR is equal to the price ratio. Okay, that is what is this one. MRS is the marginal benefit. The negative PX all over the negative PY is what we call your marginal cost. That is the purchasing power and your satisfaction. Okay, so that is the end already of the discussion regarding the consumer preferences. I hope you already have a clearer understanding on how the consumer behavior works, so that if you're going to combine it to the producer in a certain market, then we have an easy uh, comprehension already on the different concepts. So thank you, and I hope it will be clearer already.